The first World Forum Against Imperialism opens in Caracas, Venezuela. Central American migrants in Guatemala face difficult decisions at the Mexican border. And the United States' controversial travel ban grows. Hello and welcome to Telesur English. I am Estefania Bravo. This is from the South. The first World Forum Against Imperialism has begun in the Venezuelan capital, Caracas. The president of the National Constituent Assembly, Diosdado Cabello, opened the proceedings. He said Venezuela is under an imperialist siege and praised the resistance of its people. Cabello also paid tribute to Iranian General Qasem Soleimani, who was recently assassinated by the U.S.
Bueno, en nombre de nuestro país,
in the name of our country, in the name of our party, and in the name of our people, I want to formally open this international forum of free, anti-imperialist people. Whoever wants to attack us, let them, but never against the people. Long live the homeland. Long live Bolivar. Long live Fidel. Long live Soleimani. Long live Chavez. Long live Maduro. Long live the shared Latin American homeland. And long live socialism.
Members of the Cuban Communist Party Central Committee, Victor Guate, addressed the forum to condemn those who seek to divide Latin America for their own ends in full violation of international law.
The aggression and violence of the attack against Venezuela damages the whole of our America and only benefits the interests of those who want to divide us in order to exert their own domination on our people. They don't care about generating conflicts with incalculable damages in this region, as those we are seeing in different places around the world. Today in Venezuela, we are deciding the sovereignty and dignity of Latin America and the Caribbean, and the people of the South. We're also deciding the survival of international law and the United Nations Charter. We're also defining whether the legitimacy of a government is decided by its people or by foreign powers around the world.
The situation between indigenous leaders and the Ecuadorian government has grown increasingly tense after President Lenín Moreno denied that human rights violations occurred during protests in October of last year. This in spite of reports by international organizations proving otherwise.
Tensions have soared after President Lenín Moreno gave an address to the nation, rejecting the impending legal action against his government for human rights violations. Several local and international organizations have documented and strongly condemned these incidents.
Fellow citizens, you know I'm a peaceful person. Only a few things disturb me, and this is one of them. Ecuador has received, with great indignation, threats of legal action for the alleged abuse of protesters by law enforcement in October 2019. These very people who threaten the security and democracy of our country.
Several Ecuadorian human rights organizations banded together to expose the violations that occurred in last October's protests. Still, authorities continue to deny the use of force against demonstrators.
I think the statements made by the Interior Minister, the Foreign Ministry, and even by the President are out of place. They don't apply in cases where people have been persecuted. I believe citizens already know what we're demanding at the International Court of Human Rights.
The International Human Rights Commission has already acknowledged human rights violations by the Ecuadorian government.
It's unfair that the government refuses to accept these reports with the same enthusiasm that they had when they invited the International Commission to conduct its investigation. The government can't even admit their violent crimes. And let's be clear, it's the government's responsibility to avoid these incidents.
According to indigenous leaders, the persecution continues.
There are 4 matters before the courts where 7 leaders are being persecuted, my colleague and I included. We're going to attend 6 hearings to prove what occurred, and we intend to refer to the recent reports by the UN and the IHRC. I mean, when is this going to end? The entire country was in turmoil because of the government's measures.
Victims have united to sue the government for their individual cases, but more importantly, to demand justice.
Argentina's government has sent a bill to Congress aimed at restructuring the country's public debt. The government of President Alberto Fernandez hopes to restructure $1 billion worth of debt, more than half of which is held by private lenders, in order to restart the country's economy, which was left in a deep crisis by the previous administration. Upon taking office, President Fernandez inherited a public debt of about $335 billion, which is equivalent to 93% of Argentina's GDP. Thousands have mobilized in Cochabamba to mark the day of the plurinational state of Bolivia. Citizens are gathering in Zona Sur for a live broadcast by President Morales. Celebrated since 2010, January 22nd marks a day of triumph for Bolivia's various indigenous and campesino communities after decades of social struggle. Leader of the 6 federations of the Tropic of Cochabamba, Andronico Rodriguez, used the opportunity to call for unity, organization, and consciousness ahead of the May 3rd elections, as the MAS looks to win yet another election. Our correspondent in La Paz, Freddy Morales, has more.
The main event in the celebration of the plurinational state of Bolivia took place in the city of Cochabamba. Taking part were thousands of countryside laborers, coca farmers from Chapare, and those from humble neighborhoods. The self-proclaimed president, Janine Áñez, gave a speech from the government palace, in which she said that economic stability, one of the greatest achievements of Evo Morales' government, was alive for 14 years, and that corruption was rampant during this period. Evo Morales also spoke from Argentina, highlighting the principal economic and social successes of his administration, including bringing thousands out of extreme poverty and reducing the number of people leaving education early. Morales said he was the first victim of the coup d'etat, but added that the real objective of the coup is to reverse the economic advances. He said, "Now they're coming for you, for your social conquests." Today, the country finds itself militarized in anticipation of protests in support of Evo Morales.
We thank Freddy Morales for that report. After more than 2 months since the coup against President Evo Morales, Bolivia's Legislative Assembly finally accepted the president and vice president's resignations. Let's have a look.
Against all logic, a legislative minority that was part of the coup against the ousted president and vice president tried everything in their power to prevent the assembly from accepting their resignations.
Their resignation letters are completely extemporary and untimely.
Also against all logic, the majority of the assembly members who are part of Morales' movement towards Socialism Party accepted the resignations.
As assembly members, we have functions, and one of the attributions of the Legislative Assembly is to review and debate the resignations of former authorities. As such, we have complied with regulations.
The President of the Senate and leader of the MAS party provided a justification for accepting the resignations 2 months and 10 days after they were submitted, and 1 day before the end of Morales' constitutional administration.
We have prioritized the social stability of Bolivia and the responsibility that this assembly has with the people. President Evo was clearing his resignation. He signed it so that there would be no more debts, so that there is peace, so that our country can see better days.
Still, a group of lawmakers from the MAS party tried unsuccessfully to reject the resignations.
This is a question of honor, a symbolic issue. The Bolivian people vote for Evo Morales. He won the election. And we as representatives of the Bolivian people have taken a decision to reject his resignation.
Evo Morales and Álvaro García Linera were forced to resign following a military-backed coup last November after a period of far-right violence that included the kidnapping of officials and their relatives, the burning and sacking of their homes, the destruction of 9 electoral courts, and a demand by the police and armed forces for the president to leave.
Coming up after the break, we'll take an in-depth look at the latest developments for Central American migrants at the Mexican border. Stay with us. On Wednesday morning, some members of the migrant caravan that arrived in Tecunumán, Guatemala last week returned to Honduras. On Monday, a large group of the over 3,000 migrants who made the trek north crossed the Suchiate River into Mexico after being denied safe passage by authorities. But the Mexican National Guard eventually detained groups of them and returned them to Guatemala. Reportedly, the Guatemalan government provided them with the buses for their journey back home.
Getting across the border has been harder now. In the past it was easier to cross, and I don't want to even imagine what could happen to me today. That is what is difficult. You come full of hope, looking for something better. But from what I've heard, now you can get hit by a stone in the head or even lose your life.
However, some Honduran migrants have accepted an offer from the Mexican government to stay and work in that country rather than head further north to the U.S.
I think Mexico is good. There are a lot of jobs, and it's not like Honduras where the situation is critical, where they reject you if you are too old. Mexico will be a good alternative.
Close to 1,500 migrants are in Tecunumán, the border city between Guatemala and Mexico, waiting to see what the future holds for them. Our correspondent is there with the latest.
I'm here in Tecunumán, outside a camp where more than 200 people have gathered to ask for refuge. In the rest of Tecunumán, there are close to 300 people, and another 300 are in the Casa del Migrante. The Guatemalan and Mexican governments have offered to help them return to their country of origin. However, another migrant group has said that they will insist on getting to the United States, despite the fact that Mexico has said that they will not allow them entry. Also, a group of migrants will accept Mexico's offer to stay in their country and allow them to work. Let's recall that the main reason why people migrate is due to the lack of employment and security in their own country. Some have said that even though they can't get to the US, they will stay in Mexico as they've been offered an opportunity to help their families. Meanwhile, others have decided to return to Honduras.
We thank Hugo Vera for that report. Over 300,000 people fled Honduras last year, with most of them saying they couldn't stand the economic crisis and rampant violence. Experts agree Honduras is a prime example of the failure of capitalism and the neoliberal model pushed by Western powers.
The migrant caravans started in Honduras at the end of 2017, as numbers for migration and forced displacement raised every day.
There is a lot of crime, there is no work. That is why we decide to flee Honduras and look for a better future.
A lot of corruption. There is no state support. Nobody gets any help, much less young people. Look at where we are. We are forced to escape with our families, hoping for a better tomorrow.
The number of people who join these caravans rises every year. One of the reasons they do this is to save what they would have to spend on buses, and also to face the dangers of the journey as a group.
It is the neoliberal policies that have increased exploitation of people and of natural resources. Other countries' immigration policies have also become more hostile. The United States used to stop migrants at the border. Now they don't even let them get close to the gate.
The crisis grew after 2009, U.S. backed coup in Honduras. But even back then, the nation was among the poorest in Latin America. After the coup, agreements with financial institutions opened the doors for powerful neoliberal measures that left the country in shambles. 70% of people in Honduras live under the poverty line, and the numbers grow worse due to a lack of work and social programs, dooming the over 8 million citizens, most of them of working age.
Unemployment rates are at 74%. These are people with jobs who are not paid well or have a job that pays by the hour. This is the result of the neoliberal policies and have led to the rise in migration.
On top of mass migration, there's also been an increase in the criminalization of those less privileged and of minorities, as xenophobia rises.
We have seen Donald Trump promote these ideas since his first campaign. He's always had the goal to stop migration towards the U.S. He is supported by hate groups who promote this xenophobic agenda.
The Honduran government signed a Safe Third Country agreement last year as part of the anti-immigrant policies of Donald Trump. Through this measure, the U.S. hopes to halt migration to their borders.
The U.S. has shown they don't care about international agreements. We can see it in the case of the environment and in the case of accepting refugees. The U.S. has implemented highly racist and hateful rhetoric into their laws.
Despite the warnings and restrictions made by the U.S., over the next few days, a new migrant caravan will set off from Honduras.
Still to come, a damning UN report highlights growing global inequality. Stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. The Trump administration is set to extend its controversial travel ban to more African and Asian countries. According to media reports, the U.S. government plans to limit visa access for visitors from Belarus, Eritrea, Kyrgyzstan, Myanmar, and Nigeria, Sudan, and Tanzania. Speaking in Davos on Wednesday, Trump, without giving details, confirmed that more countries would be added to the travel ban list. The original ban, which was upheld by the Supreme Court after a legal challenge, was widely condemned as it mostly targeted citizens of Muslim countries.
No, we're adding a couple of countries to it. We have to be safe. Our country has to be safe. You see what's going on in the world. Our country has to be safe. So we have a very strong travel ban, and we'll be adding a few countries to it.
The latest United Nations World Social Report shows that income inequality is increasing in many parts of the world. The report indicates that in many developing and middle-income countries, the richest 1% of the population own more than 50% of economic resources, while the bottom 40% own less than 25%. Globally, 2,000 people own more wealth than the poorest 4.6 billion people combined. The study also shows that minorities and women continue to bear the brunt of poverty worldwide.
The World Social Report highlights the basic building blocks of any comprehensive policy strategy to reduce inequality in all of its dimensions. First, promoting equal access to opportunity for all, regardless of status. Second, ensuring that macroeconomic policies contribute to reducing inequality. Third, strengthening social protection systems, which are often the foundation for addressing inequalities. And fourth, tackling prejudice and discrimination.
South Africa's governing party, the African National Congress, says it has not abandoned its plans to carry out a robust land reform program. Party Secretary General Ace Magashule told a media conference on Wednesday that program will start as soon as all relevant policies have been put in place.
And improve post-settlement support measures will be implemented to ensure that restituted and redistributed land is brought to production through post-settlement support, and to improve integration and coordination of the land reform program. And special attention will definitely be given to women and young people. The development of black farmers will be prioritized through training, capacity building, the provision of landed funding, revisiting share equity schemes.
South African trade unions have expressed concern that failure to resolve the crisis at embattled national airline, South African Airways, will lead to massive job losses. The National Transport Workers Movement has since appealed to the government to provide the $140 million bailout that the airline needs to remain operational. The movement added that failure to do so will mean sending more workers to the streets. The airline on Tuesday announced the cancellation of more than 30 flights in order to save funds as it waits for a bailout from the National Treasury. The Angolan government has said it will explore all options to have Isabel dos Santos extradited from Portugal, where she has been in exile, to face corruption charges. The prosecutor general said he plans to invoke international mechanisms to bring the daughter of the former president José Eduardo dos Santos back to the country. However, he did not specify what channels would be used to do so. Dos Santos stopped living in Angola when her father stepped down in 2017. A year later, the government initiated steps to prosecute her for corruption. The richest woman in Africa has maintained her innocence. And this announcement comes on the heels of a new investigation by the International Consortium of Investigative Journalists revealed several Western financial institutions, including PricewaterhouseCoopers and Boston Consulting, aided Isabela dos Santos move more than $1 billion from parastatals, including state oil giant Sonangol, to shell companies in tax havens.
I think this is not a new situation. It is a situation that has been going on for a long time. Naturally, we intervene within civil society to oppose the position taken by the former president and to demonstrate that these thefts and lootings were indeed a well-organized, well-orchestrated affair, obviously for the benefit of these people.
Libya's Mitga airport has reopened a few hours after flights were suspended following a rocket attack that the UN-recognized government says was carried out by forces loyal to General Khalifa Haftar. According to officials, the airport located 8 kilometers out of the besieged capital, Tripoli, was attacked by at least 6 Grad missiles. The incident is the latest breach of the Russian and Turkish brokered ceasefire. Haftar's forces have in the past accused the Tripoli-based government of using the airport to launch drone strikes. And finally, in Tunisia, the 9th anniversary of the triumph of the revolution was celebrated this week. But many citizens rather chose to express their dissatisfaction with the policies that followed.
Some see the 9th anniversary of the Tunisian revolution as a celebration. On the other hand, the families of martyrs and those wounded during the struggle said they would boycott any celebration of the revolution. While they contributed to the ousting of the old regime and achieved liberty, many say that they have yet to see any benefits from their fight.
The revolution will not rest until the families of the martyrs are honored. They can honor them by eliminating the final list in an official way.
We are going to do a sitting protest in the city of Kasbah in front of the Ministry of Higher Education. We will demonstrate everywhere. We don't have anything to lose.
Workers met in public squares. However, this time, social demands were small when compared to messages that ask for the defense of Tunisia's sovereignty and a course correction in order to achieve the demands of the 2011 revolution.
We won't stop until we overthrow terrorist forces, until we overthrow Zionism, and until we overthrow those that, instead of protecting our dignity, freedom, and guaranteeing our rights, they take us to Erdogan so he can attack us.
Stuck somewhere between an ousted government and a new one that has still to take shape completely, celebrations for the anniversary of the revolution were sparse. Some of the political parties who also stood away from celebrations have long pushed for deep reforms to the demands that brought forth the revolution.
They have made the same choices as in the past in different ways. They have kept the powerful families in place and they have kept looting our people, liking sovereignty to abuse.
We are making a call to reanalyze this political system to guarantee its functioning and the good administration of the state for the sake of democracy.
And with that, we've come to the end of this news brief. You can find these and other stories on our website at telestudenglish.net. And join us on social media. We are on Facebook, on Twitter, and on Instagram. For Telesur English, I am Estefania Bravo. Until next time.